know that Alice lives across a city. She just knows she made a friend. She wants to play at the park. And you know what? She's going to play with Alice. So we're already thinking about it. I got to get Bethany Brooks' number because we're going to spend the summer in San Diego. And when we spend it there, Justin's moving there too. Alice is going to be there. And you better believe if McKenna's there, she's going to find her some Alice. But when we were that age at 3 years old, we had this completely open mind. It was just like one of those things where my daughter thinks that Alice is her friend. Therefore, Alice is coming to play at the park. She doesn't think like, oh, she lives all the way across town. You know, her parents have lives too. Her dad is in an academy today, and maybe there's not gas in the car. My daughter's saying, no, I want to go to the park. Alice is my friend. Alice should be there. And I want you guys to understand, you all have that thing inside of you. Every single one of you has that 3-year-old inside of you. That a lot of times, that circumstances within your life, things that have happened in your life, or things that you think have happened in your life that actually haven't happened, but you willed them or you thought that that was your reality, that have stopped you from wanting or desiring or going after that thing that you wanted when you were 3 years old. Every single one of us has that inside of us. And you see, the sad thing about human beings is when we don't hit our goal, we don't strive harder. If we don't make it over the bar, we don't say, you know what, I'm going to work on my legs. What we do as human beings and what's in our nature is just to lower the bar. And every single time when we don't hit it, then we lower the bar again. And then when we don't hit it, we lower the bar again. And when I say this, most of the time we do this in relationships within our lives. Because when you were 3 years old, when I was 3 years old, I had the perfect woman in my head. Some people say, wow, that's young. Yes, it was young, but I was overachieving. I remember when I was 5 years old, I was in kindergarten. Her name was Kimberly. She was blonde-headed, and she was hot. Now I think about it now, and she was only 5, so she probably wasn't hot. But at the time, she was hot. She was hot enough for me to chase her around. And I would chase her around by a slide, and I would climb up the slide when she would go up the slide, and I'd be waiting for her when she got down. And she thought I was a little bit weird, and she would always run away from me. But I wanted Kimberly. And you know what? In my head, Kimberly was my girlfriend. I don't care if she just talked to me one time, she was my girlfriend. Because if you were, when I was 5 years old, if you talked to me, you're my girlfriend. That's how it was. And I told everybody, she's my girlfriend. I remember when I got into 2nd grade, there was a girl named Heidi G. And I sat and I used to go, she wasn't in my class, but there was like Heidi K and Heidi G. You know what I'm talking about when you get little and you just do it by the last name, just the first initial. Well, she was Heidi G, and she was even hotter than Kimberly. Because Kimberly was old news, because she was only 5. And Heidi G was 7, so I was in 2nd grade, 7 years old. Heidi G was hot, and she also did one thing that Kimberly didn't do, because Kimberly would run away from me, and Heidi G would, we would be able to go, she wasn't in my class, but I would be able to go to her classroom, and when I go to her classroom, we would watch a movie, and I would be able to sit right down in front of her chair, and she would massage my head while we were watching the movie. That's game. Recognize it. But how many of you had a thought process when you were 5, 6, 7 years old? My daughter's really into princesses. You know what princesses have? They have a prince. You know what my daughter called me the other day? She said, you know what, Daddy? I'm the princess. And I said, okay. She said, Maddox, he's the prince. And she looked at me and she said, Daddy, you're the king. I said, you are a smart girl. I said, baby, it's kind of weird that, you know, when you're a princess, you definitely do want to have another prince in your life. You know, you want to be able to have that man. I don't want to talk about it right now because it makes me kind of mad. It makes me angry when I go to daycare. Not daycare, she goes to Montessori school. But there's this little kid that is there. I think, I can't remember his name. It starts with a C, but I don't really care because I don't like him. And he plays with my daughter, and my daughter is always talking about, this. And I'm like, well, he ain't that cool. So I buy her ice cream, and I'm like, did he do that for you? He didn't get you no ice cream. Look at the bouncy house I bought for you. I'll blow it up. 1 minute and 30 seconds. Bam, I turn a switch. That bad boy is on. What did he do for you? He was just sitting with a snot nose talking about, Well, my daughter at 3 years old has a picture in her mind of her Prince Charming. Every single one of you women in this place had that Prince Charming. Every single one of you men had a thought process when you were a kid of what that princess was going to be. You also had that thought process when you were 5 years old of what you wanted to be when you grew up. and how you were going to do it. I didn't know what I was going to be. I never knew. But I knew there was a blue house. There was actually not a blue house. There was a house with a blue roof in Melbourne, Florida when we used to drive back and forth. I was in second grade. And we used to drive back and forth. Me and my brother used to say, we would house call. You guys ever do this? Yes. You drive by a house, I call it. That's my house. And when you're broke, you do this. When you have money, you don't do this. Because when you have money, you could actually buy it. But when you're broke, you call stuff. Got that car? My brother would be like, got that car? And then my friends would be like, how are you going to get it? I don't know, but I called it. When you're broke, you call things. We would drive by, and my brother would house call. He'd be like, I got that one. And I'd be like, I got the one with the blue roof. He'd be like, damn, I didn't see that one. You're going to be richer than me. And I was like, yes, I'm going to be richer than you. And then we started talking about it one time, and we were like, how are you going to be rich? I don't know. How are you going to get that house? I don't know. But I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it somehow. But as we go along in the circumstances within our lives, what we start to do is we start to drop our bar. We start to look at it and say, you know what? Maybe that isn't for me. Maybe I shouldn't be able to go after that. Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe I shouldn't do that. And we start to talk ourselves out of all these things. Most of the time, it has nothing to do with our surroundings. It has nothing to do with the people that are around us. It has all to do with the stuff that you're speaking within your own head. See, the things that are in your head enter through your eyes or through your ears. So as we intake things, then they drop into us. They get inside of our heart, and then they come out of our mouth. But it has to come in one of two ways, and the only two ways it's very easy to be able to block them. You only got eyes and ears. That's the only way things can come into your life, is through your eyes and through your ears. Who you're hanging around, who you see, and what you hear. But you see, your heart is a filter, and the more time you spend on that filter, the more garbage you can actually filter out. If you just got a Brita filter, right? You guys ever use a Brita filter? If you live here in Las Vegas, you use a Brita filter, you're still drinking some nasty-ass water. But there is some triple, double osmosis. You remember when AJ, we worked at Boca Park, he was so excited he bought like a $4,000 filter of water. He was like, it's triple filtered, 4,000 filtered, and he was like, chase the water. And I was like, well, it tastes very similar. But it was a very expensive. The more expensive the filter, the more garbage you can put through and be safe in drinking it. The more and more time that you spend on your heart, that's your filter. Because you see, once it comes in here, it starts to go towards your heart. If it gets to your heart and you haven't spent that much time on your filter, you haven't spent that much time on your heart, you haven't spent that much time building up that filter, you know what's going to happen? And all the garbage that you intake is then going to come right outside your mouth. And the more and more you speak about it, I just spoke with a guy yesterday on the phone. It's so sad because the guy who gave me my first job, his daughter was supposed to be here this weekend. And it's so sad because she's had her license for a year. Her dad has been, had a tough time as far as employment in the last couple of years, but he was the guy that gave me my first job. It means a whole lot to me. He was going to be here this weekend. But they saw an accident. They were on the way, and they saw an accident, and it kind of freaked her out a little bit. Just a car accident, but it freaked her out. She started to have some anxiety, and as she started to have some anxiety, her pops, as opposed to saying, hey, baby, we're going to pump you up, we're going to move you towards it, he started to go towards like what she was feeling, as opposed to pushing her towards where he wanted her to go. She dealt with so much anxiety, she couldn't even make it yesterday. She didn't make it to the academy, and I wish that she would have been here today to hear this. Because she grew up in the same town where I grew up. A town of 35,000. Her dad was actually the rich guy in my life when I was growing up. He had no worry in the world. He owned a business. And he gave my dad a job when my dad was unemployed. He gave me my first job. And it's crazy how things switch around, and it's just a mentality switch. When he was talking about it, Brad heard him yesterday on the phone, and I tell you, he was like, you know what, this industry is not for my daughter because nobody's hiring. There's nothing going on in my town for this business. I think that she should just try something else. She doesn't need to be doing this. She just needs to go and get another job. It's crazy because a young person hasn't spent that. Sorry for spitting on it. It's all right. It's moisturizing. Now you can do some pigment. Tap it on. ... Not a lot. Thought I wasn't listening, did you? But I wish he would have been here. I wish she would have been here. I want to spend some time with them. Because her dad was the one that gave me a job. Her dad is the one that provided us to be able to get food on our table when we didn't have any food. My dad made $1,100 a month, and he had 3 kids that were teenage kids. We lived 40 miles away from our high school. I had to drive 40 miles every day to school. Only had 1 car. And the car that we had a slipping transmission. We used to push on the gas, and it would go into neutral if you pushed it too fast. So we would go, it would take us like 6 miles to get up to 60 miles an hour. And we lived on the freeway, so we used to have to jump out in traffic. And you can imagine how embarrassing it was, because we're not thinking about like, wow, I'm understanding with my parents because they're broke. Well, all we're thinking is like, I can't believe we have this car. And we're 16 years old, and we're getting on the freeway, and we have to ride on the shoulder for literally like 4 or 5 miles on the shoulder because our car won't go fast enough. But that's the guy that gave us the job, and we used to look at his life and say, wow, if we could just be in that situation, because he was the one signing the paycheck. It's amazing how things turn around, and a lot of times it's just from what you hear or what you see. But you can protect yourself if you build up your filter, you build up your heart. But you got to fill your heart with things that are, you got to take that time, you got to build up that heart and that filter of things that build you up, that protect you from it. Some people go out and get a small piece of advice, and then they say, you know what, I can go out and I can accomplish anything. No, you can't. Don't do that. Like, I can go to a crack house right now and have a good time. Seriously. I could go to a crack house and not think about ever doing drugs. Never done any drugs. I could be around people who are drinking alcohol all the time, and I ain't going to drink. I don't have any fear of that. I built up a lot of strength over the years to be able to get myself to that point. But you got to take time. You got to take that time, and you got to really invest it on your heart. You got to check the things that are going into the heart. Now, don't get me wrong. It isn't like I go home and just, Brad and I, when we're driving back, it sounds like I'm a couple. We're a couple. I'm saying like, oh, Brad and I experienced this together. We look like a couple yesterday. My daughter's on my shoulders. He's pushing the stroller. Literally, we're walking through the casino, and Brad's walking through, and he's like, man, this doesn't look good. And so I said to him, it's okay, honey. Everything will be fine. I don't even know where I was. I just want to make fun of Brad a little bit. Where was I? I'm serious. I'm not lying. That's not a joke.
I'm trying to find you to go to a crack house.
Okay, I could go to the crack house and not worry about it. The reason why is because one of those things I took the time to be able to build it up. So when I say success, I want you to understand that I understand that success is different in all of our lives. Every single one of you has a different thought process of success. Sometimes it's getting, like Chantel has a vision of success. She wants to do celebrity hair. She wants to be, like not in front of the camera, behind the camera, and be able to take care of all that kind of stuff. I see that Jenny has a bright future in educating, if you guys all notice. I see that Coley does also. And I tell you this, I was writing down, and you're the first person that's ever made me feel this way. When I listened to you talk, you reminded me of Stephanie Kachelski. She was my old boss, and she's the artistic director of Paul Mitchell. And the way that you articulate things, and the way that you kind of almost laugh at yourself, and the way that you can get across your points is so incredible. And you have a bright future in that. That could be a success part for you. But we all have a different thought process of success. Justin wants to do cutting, and I was watching him, and it was almost like he was salivating. He wanted to finish the haircut when I was going through, and that's what we're going to start to do now. So I'll do the first haircut, I'll do the first section, and I'm going to have him finish it because I know he can do it. And he was walking around, he was educating, and I could see him just basically coming to life. But we all have a different thought process of what success is, but we need to hone in on it, and we need to make sure and we know what it is. Because some people say, I want to be successful. I had one girl say, I want to be successful just like you. And I was like, well, what do you think I do? And she was like, oh, you just travel around, have a good time, and you guys, you're always doing cool stuff. And I was like, I ain't doing cool stuff all the time. I tell you, really, honest, on the real, I am not. If you saw me last night, I had one kid crying, yelling at me, the whole thing. And then my daughter got the little, finger underneath the bowling ball, and she's yelling, snot coming down her nose, Daddy! And she just does this, Daddy! And she just puts out her hands. And she's just like Frankenstein walking towards me. And I try and move a little bit, and she's just Daddy, 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 Daddy. And at first, before I was a parent, I would have thought, damn, you're nasty. You got some snot coming down your nose. I ain't trying to touch you. But as a parent, you look at it and you're like, I did the parent thing yesterday. Somebody saw me. I cleaned off her nose. I cleaned off her nose with my finger. I licked it, and just put it across. I was like, that's daddy's cleaner. You know what I'm saying? And then I did that, and then I picked up my sandwich. I didn't even wash my hands. You have children, right?
No.
Exactly. That's why